to a self-managed business unit. And what we'd like to share with you today is some of that journey. I will not go through all the slides that I have shared, and there are some videos of our journey also that is there. The focus is to kind of take it as a dialogue, because I think a lot of people who are joining today, they are not just curious about this way of working, but also how, and they have usually a lot of questions on how did we do X, Y, or Z. So I'm looking forward to those kind of questions, and seeing what we can provide as answers to those questions. So thanks a lot. um, if we get started, I think the first and foremost for me, the scene setting is really what is the ecosystem around us, right? And if this was 24 months back, actually 24 months back, I was making speeches about VUCA that nobody gave two hoots about, but over the last 18 to 24 months, I think it's just become a fact for everybody around the world that that we are living in a very volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. And when we talk about that, we cannot say that we as teams or individuals or organizations can work and interact on our own, and therefore we are all part of an ecosystem. And therefore the mantra of the past has been organization built to last. If you talk about built to last was like a big theme, and my hypothesis, or what our hypothesis somehow is, that I like to propose is organization built to learn and adapt. That's some of the thinking that we should be thinking about in this VUCA world. And I'd like to explain that with a small story. In South America, in Honduras, there is a city called 𝘀𝗂𝗀𝗃𝗀𝗳, and it is a city that is spread across two sides of the river 𝘀𝗂𝗃𝗀. And it is a city that has always had a lot of cyclones and very bad weather events happening. And whatever bridge that had been built across this river was always getting damaged every few years because of the bad weathers. So what happened was the city then got together. They got the best experts. They actually got some scientists from Japan and engineers to kind of build this bridge that would last long for them. And they did the entire project in record time and completed the bridge. And in 1998, they built this beautiful bridge and had this big inauguration. And just later in that year, there was another massive weather event, which basically destroyed the city and changed the course of the entire river. The bridge itself lasted, but the entire purpose of the bridge lasting itself did not make any sense for the city anymore, because it was no use anymore, right? So this is kind of like the contrast. And maybe today is a good day to also give another example. BlackBerry has been shut down, right? And you can talk about the BlackBerry. When it launched out, it was one of the best phones that anybody could buy, and now it went on its quiet death. And I think that's a little bit, again, in a business context, what happens that if you're not changing and adapting to a volatile, uncertain world, then you will be having lots of challenges in this setup. So what we see really is that a lot of new organizational principles are getting more and more mainstream. Probably all of you, or many of you on the call, have heard one or some of these principles, whether it's be Eric Ries's Lean Startup, or Lalou's Reinventing Organizations, or Sociocracy, Semco Style from Ricardo Semler and his support people, or holocracy. There is a lot of these mainstream setups, and I think what it really just shows is that there are new alternatives to organizational design that is coming in, that is more and more mainstream now. And it will be interesting to see how all of these evolves, because I think they all have their own principles, but I think we believe that it's you have to put it all in the context. As with every organizational design, you have to put it in the context of your own team and organization. Um, so before we get started on anything, I think the first thing I keep coming back to is that we have to be thinking of why you want to get started on this journey, right? There must be something that is pulling you, and articulating that aspect or few aspects is critical before you start any journey. And I think this is usually sometimes the first milestone itself that a lot of people will stumble upon, because maybe you as a leader, or maybe you as a team, or you as a CEO would want to say, hey, I believe in all of this, let's get started. And are not able to work with the team on articulating the why that you feel, or you as a smaller group feel, that you should be starting on this journey. And I think that's a very important milestone, which we actually took quite a few months trying to discuss with the team, and then join together with the team, built this why together, on why we want to be on this journey. And for us, giving a little bit insight, the business that we are leading is called 𝘂𝗲𝗄𝗃. And 𝘂𝗲𝗃 is basically providing, the purpose of 𝘂𝗲𝗃 is to provide the future steering solutions of off-road vehicles. So think of tractors, combine harvesters, these kind of big off-road vehicles. They are going autonomous, they are going electrified, like the Teslas of the world, right? So you can see that the same thing is happening in the off-road market. And that is the purpose of the business. And when you have the purpose of the business to be moving the future of steering, what the organization design has to be is to be able to fulfill that purpose. And that has to be the why behind the way we are set up. And really, for us, because the technologies were changing so rapidly, and new things that were coming in, for us, the speed and agility to which we operated needed to be at a different level, to make sure that the customer engagement was very high. So I think that's a critical element for us, that with the ever-changing market and customer demands, we had to be much more agile in the way that we approach customers. And therefore, that was one of the critical whys for us. And as part of that, we took what many people call agile projects principles into an organizational context. Secondly, we really felt that the engagement of the employees, the more empowerment that we have for the employees, is where then the customer also is benefiting, and also has a side effect that engaged employees are more loyal, are more committed. They actually end up delivering way more than you might imagine, in compared to a neutral employee. And I'm not even talking about a disengaged employee. And all research has been showing that a large percentage of the working population has been disengaged at work, and that's something that we wanted to affect as part of it. So I think these are the two things that kind of the reasons for our design of the organization this way, to fulfill the purpose that we have had. And I would say that each team that is going on this journey should work with their teams to build this why themselves in their own context. So from that point of view, as we said, when we said about these agile principles to an organizational context, this is what we mean, that you see that it is not about hierarchy versus non-hierarchy. I think that's an important point that we need to think about, because I try to give the example of the army, maybe, right? Because in many cases you will think that the armed forces are one of the most hierarchical setups. They have extremely high structure in terms of how they are organized. And it's the same armed forces that have special forces units, right? So if you look at the Navy SEALs, the one that went and captured and killed Osama bin Laden, for example, they are not organized as any setup as a hierarchy. They are mission based, and each leader for the mission is chosen just before the mission, and and then they are leading for the mission. So you can see an organization like the armed forces has this ambidextrous nature, where you fit what is needed for the purpose of it. And I think that's also something that at least we believe that it's important to think in terms of the context of where you are. Doesn't mean that all hierarchy is bad or all self-management is great. It's not a dialogue about hierarchy versus non-hierarchy. It is a matter of what is needed for your context and what is needed for your situation, because in most cases you would be able to work with elements of both. But this is just to give the principles approach, right? A lot of the hierarchical thing is about, okay, is about planning and control and aligning and stability. I think stability is kind of a very big key word for what we have in the current setups of organizational design. And when you're talking about more of this non-hierarchical ways of working, then agility, it becomes the main driver. So stability versus agility is not opposite ends of a spectrum. It's like, you are on a scale, and I think you need to be kind of working with that kind of a scale, not just from an organizational context, but also from your team and parts of the team context. Then once you have the why clarified for yourself, then I think, then a lot of people ask, so how do we do it? Now we get it. Now this is the part that we want to talk about. Then how do we want to do this? And the way we describe it is that, hierarchy is a framework that, the framework contains structures, contains processes, contains mindset and behaviors or culture, depending on what context you'd like to use. And if you are replacing the framework of hierarchy, you need to provide these alternate frameworks. And therefore, these alternate frameworks would be newer organizational structures, newer processes or alternate processes, and new mindset and behaviors, things that needs to be invested in. So I think that's an important element that if you're moving in this direction, you will probably have to start with one of them. Maybe you as a team or an organization feel that your biggest pain point is the structure. Maybe it is not, because a lot of people who have approached us and they're like, oh, do we have to change the structure of the organization? So, what is the problem you're trying to solve, right? That is the first question. If the problem is not with the structure, then and if it's a problem with the process, if it's with transparency, then if it's with a cultural challenge, then you would start with the mindset and behavior. So I think it's important that you start where the tension is, and not not try to force fit a solution that, okay, now we are slow or want to move to an agile setup or bureaucratic, and therefore we need to change the structure. I think what at least what we say is that you start where the tension is, and you slowly start to unravel the real things that are holding your organization moving forward in its purpose. And ironically, as you start to unravel, you might touch upon other elements besides where you started. So it doesn't matter where you start. Our experiences, you will probably end up touching all three elements as you start to explore anyways.
Vivek, we have a question concerning the why. Rasmus, please, you're welcome to unmute and turn on your video if you want to ask a question.
Yeah, video not working,
Okay.
but microphone hopefully.
Yeah.
No, I was just curious, Vivek, in terms of building this, as it seemed, shared ownership of the why. How did you front load or set the scene and build the conditions for the team and the colleagues to get that settled and get that going?
So I think it is always about starting with the aspiration, right? So I think you start with the strategy, and I think when we started off, we said, okay, this is the strategy. The strategy was this was the purpose, that we want to build the future steering solutions. To grow the business very ambitiously requires a lot of those elements, and clearly identifying what really from a strategic point of view we saw was, okay, is going to be an area, and our experience was that these two areas could be one of those issues that could be part of the reasons. And then we kind of work with the team to kind of say, hey, like when we did the entire strategy session, we were presenting it to the entire team. The team was challenging us on the different elements of the strategy, and first we actually finalized the strategy with the team. So once you so our first workshop actually was the strategy finalization when I joined the business, so that was really at the heart of what the team took ownership about. And then we said, okay, if you want to achieve this strategy, then what do we talk about changing in terms of an organizational design? And I think there we were able to bring out the why, but I think again the how was not that very clear at that first point of time. And I think this is also where at least we were open enough to saying, hey, these are some of the new ways that are happening out there. We have not tried it, but we know that good organizations have been successful trying this, and that we would like to try this approach. And that's how we got started, right? Because at the starting stage, you were not able to show what it will bring before you try it. So I think it's a little bit of a chicken and egg situation, but we had the team backing us up on the strategy, right? And of course we had also agreed with the management that because we are a small business unit within a larger division, which is part of a larger group. So we have broader organizations around us, and we also agreed that, hey, this is something that we want to try and see if it goes. So we kind of gave it like a pilot setting to give us an initial 18-24 month period to try this, with always the plan B of, hey, if it doesn't work, we know what is the plan B is, to go back to what we all know as terms of organizational design. So I think that was the way we got started to get the ownership for the team and how to try it, because you cannot show them these are the results and stuff like that, because you're starting off something on a new basis.
Vivek, talking about strategy, Tom Miller has an interesting question to you. Tom?
Yes.
Well, I put it in the chat. So it goes to Lohmann's laws of organizational behavior. Does strategy follow structure, or does structure follow strategy? This is a debate that goes on in MBA and PhD programs endlessly.
Sorry, was that a comment? Because or was that a question? Because
maybe it was not a question, but I find at least a comment very interesting, and I'm curious to hear your opinion. Does strategy follow structure, or does structure follow strategy in your experience or point of view?
I think my point of view is that maybe I call maybe depends on who you follow, but I like the concept of thinking business as life or anything else as the infinite game that Simon Sinek says, right? So in an infinite game, there is no starting and ending point. So maybe the time that you are starting to discuss things, then that's where you start to see is at that point of time, is the team's tension strategy or structure or process or mindset. So I keep coming back to this. Maybe when we started, it was a new business unit and there was no strategy in place at all. So we felt that starting with the strategy was the right thing. But maybe if you take it, if we were trying to do the structural change now, we already have a strategy in place. So we wouldn't start with a strategy. We would start with maybe a structure or a mindset or process. So I think it's if you think it as a circular loop or an infinite loop, then the question for me again becomes irrelevant. Maybe it depends on your context where you are on that loop.
Okay, Manula, you also have a question in the chat. Would that be relevant to talk about now?
We could take it later as well. I'm fine as we approach, with
then please ask question later on. Thank you.
Yeah.
And let me see. Manula, that's fine. Okay, go ahead, Vivek.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people like to get to know the practical things that we have tried and worked with and stuff. So I think here are some of the hacks that we have worked with, from a structural point of view, what we just did was to kind of saying, okay, we would follow the sociocracy and holocracy as an inspiration, because we got to the why, and then when we said, okay, now how do we actually practically do it, we felt at least that the framework that we got from sociocracy and holocracy was a good starting point. Instead of starting to build something from scratch, we use those two approaches as our base to build the e-steering way. And the way that it is organized is that you replace then a traditional function organizational into the cross-functional teams approach, which was based on, we had for our strategy we had 3 must-win battles, and for those must-win battles each needed cross-functional teams. So we just kind of organize ourselves in those cross-functional teams to be able to fulfill the purpose of those strategy elements. So that's where we built ourselves in a way of hierarchy of purpose instead of hierarchy of people. I think that's also what holacracy and sociocracy talks about, that you try to organize based on purpose. The other element that we really work together is to change the way that we are doing meetings and holding what is called governance meetings or tactical meetings, where we are really trying to decentralize the way that decision making is happening, and that everybody is able to bring a proposal, and it is the reverse, that it is about showing valid objections. And in most cases, the objections that we, at least what I have experienced, that when you put some criteria for objections, it is theoretical, and asking for no, I don't like it is not a valid objection as a leader. So for example, that these are some of the things that like, for example, I can give a good example. Amazon, in not as a company, but at least some of these approaches, they have a philosophy of one door, two door decision making. So and I think that's a very pertinent example, because most and what does one door, two door mean? One door means decisions that are reversible in a short span of time with less consequences, or sorry, two door means it's reversible, and one door means it's less reversible. So maybe major investments, setting up a factory, etc., would be some, buying a company would be some of the major one door decisions. And many day-to-day operation decisions are two-door decisions that say, okay, you decided something today, can you change the decision with less consequences in a short span of time when you know more? And when you start thinking decisions in those two buckets, then you are able to actually accelerate the speed of these so-called two-door decisions. And I think that at least has helped us to say, is it good enough for now and safe enough to try, what we call gen set, then you are able to move forward and actually execute on many of these ones. And the way we are organized, where we have, for those of you who know holacracy, there are also roles like lead link, facilitator, secretary, where it's also the role of, for example, a facilitator to ensure that a lead link is not acting like a traditional hierarchical leader, and ensuring that the team is actually taking decision in a decentralized way. And I'm very fortunate to have a very strong facilitator in our team, who was actually calling me out, especially me. Starting with me, I was also trained in the traditional hierarchical ways of working, and it starts with the change of the leadership. So if any of you are thinking about this before you get started on this journey, remember, it's your journey first before your team's journey. So that's a very important point that I'd like to make here. And therefore you are also learning as you are actually trying out this approach. And another example was that when we say, okay, but you took away the hierarchy and organized by purpose, so what about leadership? What about leader role and manager? How did you manage that? And the way we approached it was that we kind of said, okay, we split this role of a traditional manager, where there is a myth in most cases. I would claim that every manager is able to do both the functional leadership and the people leadership equally well. Most leaders are geared one way or the other. Now, my background is in computer science and international business marketing, and I'm not the expert in hydraulic solutions and technical solutions. So as a leader in e-steering, my gearing on the functional leadership side is much lower on the technique side, and I'm more on the commercial side and on the people leadership side. And I think this is the truth in most leadership positions, that you're geared either one way or the other. And therefore, why do we impose in many cases that one person has to cover all of these aspects? And that's what we kind of did. We split the roles and then said, okay, those of the people who wanted to take the functional leadership, and also because of their experience, because of their abilities that they have proven over the many years, traditional functional leaders were automatically chosen as to be the leads in those functional areas. And then the people who showed the passion for the people leadership side could take activities that were building on developing people and supporting the journey of the people side discussion. So I think it's an example of what we did.
Actually, Manjula asked very relevant question right now. How did you manage the emotions with titles and power?
That's a very good question. So I think emotions are real and have to be addressed as part of the discussions. We had actually very honest discussions. So we had the support of a trained organizational psychologist, especially in the first 6 to 8 months of our support. 𝘀𝗂𝗰𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 from Implement. I can give you the details if you want to know more about who supported us. And literally he was kind of embedded with the team for that period, because we really believe that we need to create the safe space for people to talk about those emotions. So actually, when he was especially the first 3 months, he was there quite often. The training part was one part of it, but he had free slots where basically people would book time with him and discuss about what were the challenges they were facing through this process. And I can tell you that titles and and what it means, career paths, and what is this all about? Why are we focusing on HR stuff, and why are we not doing technical stuff? These are it's very strong technical organization. You can imagine, and these were naturally part of the questions that people had, and to be able to healthily discuss that, what's in it for me, or why do we want to do it, has to be part of your journey. If you ignore it, then you risk you run a big risk of the opposite and losing your best people. And just to give an example from our side, not everybody is buying into the whole of this journey, right? We approximately 75 to 100 people, starting with 75, now close to 100 people on the journey altogether. And I would say we had 3 people who had to say, this was not for us. We have tried it, but it's not for us, and we would like to do it. The good thing was that we could find them positions within Danfoss itself. We supported them to kind of like find new roles within a big organization like Danfoss. But we had more people join because of this. So it's in the bigger picture, you will see that if you are approaching this with the open book and not we believe this is right and just impose it on the organization, you will actually get out of it with much more positive results in terms of people and their approach to all of these approaches.
Very interesting, Vivek. And Mette, I think this is from Mette. Does a leader play a role in people development? It's quite relevant to what you're talking about now. Does a leader play a role in people development?
Yeah, so I think the ownership of development is the individual. So that's something we firmly believe, that everybody owns their own development. The role of a leader is to help facilitate that and support that individuals' desires, ambitions, wishes, discussions based on what they can provide in that organization or in that context. So I think that's how we kind of define it, and also why we set it up as they could choose their own sparring partners. So you can in the people development part in the middle here, you can see here that we said, instead of going to the traditional managers that they were going to as for their development dialogues, they could choose who their sparring partners was. And actually one of the sparring partners was a young kid just out of college who said, I want to be a sparring partner. And also because the people wanted to go to him to learn something about new technologies, right? And that is equally relevant in that context for individuals. So I think that's how we see it, that individuals are responsible for their development. The leader's role is to facilitate that dialogue and discussion, and we try to provide that by tools, templates, trainings, even budgets for trainings that we were giving to people to ensure that that they were moving in that path.
Okay, thank you.
So then I think having touched that, I would like to touch about a little bit about the behaviors, because I think that's a very important element. One of the hardest things is the soft skills, or so-called soft skills. They are, in my viewpoint, they are the hardest skills. In business, almost everybody has very high IQ, but when it comes to emotional intelligence, emotional awareness, how do we discuss conflicts, how do we discuss, how do we communicate, how do we have non-violent communication, how do we do feedback, and both the giving and receiving feedback. These are very tough skills. I think all of you who might be there who have received feedback, you are sitting there, the one receiving is you can feel the heartbeat always up, that what's it going to be. And even for the person giving it, you are always trying to be, am I doing it the right way? Am I really helping, or am I just giving things that are not really helpful for the person? Because in many cases that we have seen is that the direct manager is at best knowing 30 to 40% of the actual work of the person. And there is very rare that there are broader 360 discussions that are happening. And that's some of the things that we kind of changed, that we said we trained people on feedback, and then we made sure that there was 360 feedback for everybody, not just for few selected people or few managers or whatever, but everybody was getting at least 2 times in a year formal review process with a 360 with their peer group, so that the people who are actually giving and receiving feedback are the people you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, and not just a manager who is usually not knowing 100% of what you are doing at work. So I think that's some of the hacks. I think a lot of people like to learn about the lessons learned that we might have, and what we've tried to do it here is from an individual and a collective context, and what is internal to the team and external to the team context. As I said before, it is a personal journey for everybody, starting with yourself. Please don't discount the change to yourself. All of us are part of that system, and it's there from our, it's kind of like in our genetic, DNA almost, because that's how we are taught in school and university, and then we start at work and grow at work. So first start with yourself and then your team. and that remember that everybody in your team will be on their own individual journeys. Some of them will be ahead, some of them will be far behind. So that's an important aspect. There has to be the balance between stepping back and stepping forward. Like, so some of the former managers, they have to be, like myself, I had to let go of decisions that I was used to keeping to myself. And same with some of the team members, former managers, they have to step back. But that also requires the team to actually step forward and take some of the decision. And I think that balance, we managed to do it in a good way, we feel, and that's why we have been quite successful, I feel. But it's an important element that it's not just one side just dropping and leaving and the other side just trying to imagine that everything will be picked up. So it is a balance that has to be understood. And that's why we say start with the tension. Don't try to change the whole thing overnight, but start where the tension is and try to solve from there. And I think a lot of element for visibility. So I use visibility as an acronym for titles, for all of these things that people have as part of their aspects. From a collective point of view, any change is not easy, right? So think of it like as any change, whether you are trying to go digital or whether you're trying to go agile or whether you're trying to go self-management, every change is having their own one. But I think it's important that you should ask yourself, do you have that get good enough for now, safe and to try mindset? The why, as I mentioned, is very important, and the transparency of the business has to be paramountly available. It's actually scary. A lot of our team members were scared initially with the transparency that we were providing, because on one hand that also increases the the obligation, and that's also another element that that we need to be considering, that run the business like you own, as we say in Danfoss, means if you want to run it like your own, means that you also have to take more tough decisions. Because if you're running your own business, you don't take only fun decisions to hire people and grow the business and invest and stuff, but you also have to take, in a corona period, take tough decisions, which projects to reduce, which costs to reduce, because we are now suddenly having a different situation. And this actually is one of the great examples where one of our project managers stepped up to actually say, he will make the plan for entire business on how do we do the savings. And they came back with some proposals where I was not in agreement with, and I was told basically that, hey Vivek, you know less about the business than we do, so this is what we commit to as e-steering, and we still be able to do the savings that was needed in the situation that we were with as like everybody for corona. The element of explaining to the outside world, because this is actually something a lot of people struggle with. Okay, but it's fine that I am like this, but how do I tell the world that I'm not just director, senior director, vice president, but I'm just an e-steering leader? Or what does it mean just being an e-steering leader? I'm a software guy, I'm a marketing girl, whatever, right? And I think this is some of the things that a lot of people struggle with, and I think it is something that we have to actually acknowledge. But what we say is that you have to be explaining that in the traditional context. So we just say, okay, here is this is our key roles, and these key roles you can link it to some of your functional specialities, as we do, because everybody is doing at least 2-3 roles. Nobody is a project manager only, or a software engineer only, because as a software engineer you would also be doing some other project work and supporting something else, and that's the reality. And also for leaders, there is a shift to change the leadership style from more directing to influencing, servant leadership styles. I think that's a very important element that has to be considered, and I think you have to be considering that if you are leading the change as part of that aspect. And lastly, what we say is that changing processes, I think we have to work with the broader organization. in a large company like Danfoss, where we are like in this case we got like a teal bubble in a big organization, then of course we have global processes on HR, on on procurement, on IT and stuff. And I think what we have learned is that first of all you need to engage with them, and not just ignore them and say, no, whatever they are saying is all wrong or whatever. There is a reason why they are doing what they are doing, right? So you have to engage with those corporate functions. They are actually also looking for how do we operate in a different world. Now it's not any different, but over the last 12 to 18 months, the amount of work that HR teams and IT teams have tried to put in to make us all work from home and and feel our well-being and ensure the well-being of all of us, I would say is on a different scale than it has been in the 12 to 14 to 18 months before the Corona period, right? So you can imagine they also want to change. So it's what we did was to say, hey, we are trying it out. Would you like to use us as a pilot for some of the things that you want to try out? And actually that was a very good way to integrate some of the resistance that we saw initially from the corporate functions and organizations that were on us. And of course, it doesn't come for free. You're not going to make any big change without investment upfront. We were very clear that we had a window where our business was doing well and we could set this up, and that's the time when we invested. We got external support and all of that stuff to do that, because as with every business, the business downturn happens, and by the time we had actually become self-sufficient to do it on our own and then continue the journey on our own, and therefore we were able to successful in the 4-year journey. And as I said, some people will not be part of this journey because they simply feel that this is not their path. And
actually, Vivek, relevant to a question relevant to what you just said, we had a question just recently by 𝘀𝗂𝗰𝗴𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀. Would you like to bring your question forward, Christian? And there was one more question above related to the same.
Hi, Vivek. Nice to see you again.
Hey,
Christian. Hi.
Hi.
I'm doing fine. The question that I have is, how did the corporate functions HR react to this project, and what were the interfaces in terms of salary development, in terms of scorecards and so on? And you already mentioned titles and all these kind of things. So how did the overall organization react on this?
Yeah, so I think as I was just saying, that's exactly what we did. We where we reached out proactively to so the head of HR, not only the head of HR but the process responsibles for compensation, for performance management, all of these processes that are there in the organization. We actually proactively engaged with them, and we said, as we stepped on, we started with feedback. So so that was the first step that we wanted to discuss. Then we touched upon the annual review process where we're talking about compensation, and then, okay, this is the change we want to try, and are we still breaking laws? Are we still being true to what Danfoss as a principle stands for, and so on and so forth. So what we found is actually there is a lot of, if you work with the business, so the corporate functions, you are actually able to hack many of the changes with them, because they are also looking for changes. So like almost all HR functions are looking at, well, what are new ways of performance? Are we getting away from the bell curve? Are we doing something else? And are we measuring team performance or versus individual performance? So what we said that, hey, we can be the sandbox for you, and that made it easier for many of the functions to say, okay, let's try this pilot in e-steering and see how it goes. And therefore we were able to actually hack some of these processes, and we're still trying to do that. For example, right now we are trying to do work with career paths, right? Career paths is a question that comes up, so then we have to work with the team in the same way to understand how to do that. So it's proactive engagement, and then you get the permission to hack with them. I think that's the best answer I can give.
Yeah, and the other way around. So what measures did they took from you and implemented in the entire organization already?
So yeah, so I can tell you one of the measures that we have seen really popularity that has happened is this the sparring partner and the mentoring approach. Some of our team members are here, and now Danfoss has started by themselves. The people have started company-wide mentoring sessions where people can choose their own sparring partners. So it's amazing to see, right? You have 20,000 people plus 25,000 people plus, and then now people can choose their own sparring partner. People are volunteering to be mentors, and people are nominating their own mentors as part of their process. So for me, that was amazing to see that more and more teams are talking about 360 feedback, especially a lot of managers, they want to take the 360 feedback process as we developed the templates for it, and they are now trying to use those templates for it. So I think what I always say is that as I was saying in this hacks, the list of hacks that we have here, each of them you can try. You don't have to, it is not necessary that you do all of them. And we definitely saw that team hiring, the transparency of financials, and as I said, the sparring and development process was actually something that has caught on. Maybe in some other organizations, some other topics will be interesting, but for within Danfoss, that was actually the most widespread after our work. Okay. Then I think that's for me, this is the last slide. I have more slides in backups and stuff, but I think it will depend on the questions. The last slide really is, if you are on this journey, I think this is the kind of like my recommendation for you to think about it, or for your team to think about it, is that always start with your context and set the context why you want to work in these new ways of working. Your context will be different from everybody else's context. And once you have that, then when you ask the team asks, what are you starting with the how, as I said, you will have to touch, most likely you will touch structures, process, and mindset, and really doesn't matter where you start with. So start with where the tension is first. So if you as a team that, we want to focus on the development of our people, okay, then focus on the process of development. If you want to focus on, we want to have a more transparency culture, then focus on that aspect. Or say, no, we want to go into trying out new organizational structures and meeting structures, then that's where you can start. So I think start where the tension is. That's where also you will try to see and get more support for making the change, and making the change long lasting, instead of just saying it was just a fad or an experiment. Other element is that do constant retrospectives, and keep challenging yourself. Don't fall in love with the with the way, right? So okay, we try to hack a way, and it didn't work, and say, okay, that's okay, now we go back and try some other way, and then we try some other way, because you have to fall in love with the outcome, not with the process that you're developing, or the mindset or culture you're developing. Because at the end of the day, remember, this is to fulfill the purpose of the organization. We are not here to it is not just for sitting around and saying, hey, we feel good about the way of working, but the business results are bad. No, you have to work in balancing the way of working with the business results also, and the same with the people engagement side. And lastly, please get started and lead by example, because if you wait for the CEO, if you wait for the top management, if you wait for everybody in your team to buy in, then it'll be too long. I believe everybody on the call and everybody in the world has influence to make a difference in one area. Doesn't matter if they can change the entire organization structure or not, but they can influence one area, and start there. And as you build on it, people will start to follow you because the results will speak for themselves. And I think that's an element that you should don't hold yourself back, because that's one of the things that we have asked, and a lot of people have reached to me before, but Vivek, but the management is not behind us and they don't want to do this and stuff like that. Yeah, okay, but the management has their they have so many things that they're working on. So what is it that you can do? Are you the management is not needing to say yes to changes in the way that you are working within your own team. So it is some of the things that there are some things that of course requires to be aligned in a big organization and a big context, but it's not all of it. So I think start with at least where you can make the difference if you feel that you don't have the support in the organization around you. We were fortunate to have the support and the management support, so that helped us move forward faster. But for those who are feeling that they are not having that environment, then I would recommend to get started where you are.
Thank you very much. Excellent, Vivek. We have actually in the chat, there are 6 persons who have asked questions that have not been asked yet, and I will ask you to step forward one by one. And I want to start with you, Manjula, but you have so many questions, so if I may ask you to ask one of them, then we'll take a round and get back to you. Please.
I think most of my questions are answered, like, as we progressed with the presentation. Couple of few I have here, especially with, were there any hypotheses or any reference data to steer this kind of a change that you spoke about, Vivek? So like you spoke about the employee engagement thing, the survey that was done by a company, and you spoke about that as a data. Anything which was inside the organization, maybe like the tension, where there was tension, like the voice of the customer or your net promoter score, something that triggered that this change is something that the organization will look forward to?
Yeah, actually there was so even before I was hired for this role, this is also where I touched about a little bit of the management buy-in, right? So my leader 𝘀𝗂𝗰𝗴𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, he had a situation where one of the employees actually from the team came to him and were talking about, I have a lot of these ideas that I have in my mind that we are not able to execute because we are organized in very siloed functions. He was a software expert, and we were organized as software and hardware and mechanical and sales and all of these functions, and he felt that that he could not bring the ideas to him. So I think that was actually one of the main things that kind of triggered that, okay, if that dialogue, that okay, people really feel the tension of not being able to bring your ideas forward and test it in an organization in such a fashion. So that is one example. And also when we were discussing the strategy element of it, really we were discussing that, okay, how can we faster in the response to the customer, because we can all agree that enhancing customer experience is a critical success factor for most businesses, and we really felt that was not in our net promoter score, in our scores that we do with the customer surveys, we could see that our customer responsiveness scores were not the best benchmark, and we want to really be the benchmark for it. So those were 2 at least elements for us to consider.
Okay. And Vivek, did you consult any Big 5 for this kind of change that you brought into the organization?
No, we didn't, and I think the reason why we also went with the consultant we mentioned, 𝘀𝗂𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 from Implement. Implement, I think you would probably classify it as now as a mid-sized consultancy firm.
Yeah.
But the reason why we went with 𝘀𝗂𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 personally was, again, the way that he was himself personally open to actually learning with us. Because if people come with the mindset of saying, we are experts and here is how you do it and here is your 7-step program, yeah, okay, then I don't buy that anymore. So
Okay.
so it here
Yes,
was a
nice
person who
to
was
hear that. Nice to hear that.
Hey, thank
But
you,
you know,
Manuela.
but actually, you can see that a lot of people now, if you write, you know, if you read McKinsey or HBR or any of these articles, everybody's writing about this now. So maybe there are now experienced people there who are able to do this, but
Yes.
but that's, you know, not at that point of time.
Okay, thank you, Manuela. We'll get back to you in a minute if you have more questions. I want to yeah, you have so many questions, and that is so nice. 𝘀𝗂𝗰𝗋𝗳𝗀, I'm not sure I pronounced this correctly. 𝘀𝗂𝗰𝗋𝗳𝗀, you asked some time ago a question in the chat. Would you like to step forward and enable your video? And ask your
my video is already enabled.
there you are.
Thank you for giving me a chance. Hi, Vivek. It was very nice talk. I just wonder, I would like to learn more. How do you make a decision-making process, that decentralized decision-making? Could you please give a real-life example where the centralized decision-making was happening and you have converted it to a decentralized decision-making and it went very well and smooth? It will be nice learning for me.
Yeah, so the way that we do our decision making, we follow the core principles from holacracy and sociocracy. So for further reading, you can actually use those aspects where they have what we call governance meetings and tactical meetings. So you might have governance meetings are usually structural discussions, organizational structure or processes discussions, and tactical are operational decisions that you might have to take in the organization. And what happens is that you're for these meetings, if you see a traditional meeting, what happens is that, okay, somebody has an idea, they bring it to the table, and then they are waiting for the manager's approval to say, okay, can I go ahead with this business case, right? Or can I implement this idea, or can I execute this? That's what we call as a traditional central decision making, because you're looking for the leader to take the decision. When we flip it around by saying, okay, everybody is bringing the proposal, and now it is the now everybody is equal. There is not, it's not like, okay, manager's objection is higher objection than somebody else's objection, or so on and so forth. So everybody is in that process, they are the same. And what you are trying to raise is, okay, it's okay, we have this business case. So somebody says, okay, I want to execute on this project idea and stuff, and it's now the others obligation to raise valid objections why it should be stopped. So if you flip that around into saying why should, instead of saying approval by manager as a discussion, you are taking objection as an exception, and that's what is really being our approach. I would have to go detail into how governance meetings works or tactical meeting works for you to maybe understand a bigger context, but that's maybe the essence of it, that you're flipping the paradigm into delaying decisions, because either the manager needs more data, or the manager has a different viewpoint, or whatever else, to now putting the obligation on the leader saying, okay, if I cannot prove that you are wrong, then is it okay for you to continue? And in most cases, the question is, can we roll back if you are wrong? And that's what I was talking about, the two-door principle, right? That's the two-door principle. And in most cases we found is that you can roll back. Can I roll back in 3 months if it is not successful? Yes, you can. Okay, then I don't have any objection anymore, because I might say, okay, I believe that is wrong, but that's my experience, but I cannot be sure. So I'll ask, okay, do you think it's okay to roll it back after 2 months after try it? Yes. So then let me try for 2 months. I'll come back to you in 2 months and then see if we can progress further.
Right, but I just would like to pitch on an aspect which I feel is missing here. Taking the manager's say on the idea to go ahead. In another way, it is taking him on board as well and sharing the responsibility too. So if he has his say to give a green signal to the idea, that means he is sharing the responsibility too. So if we skip him and we say, well, this is good, and we try it for week or two or a couple of months, and then it's good or bad, then you face the consequences anyway. But if manager was on board from the day one, then he's sharing the responsibility, and you feel more confidence in your try, regardless the results, failure or success. How would you take that one?
Yeah, I would say that's exactly where the mindset change for leadership has to happen, right? So for me, I think that's not just for leadership or the team. So I cannot be saying I told you so. If that is my approach, then I should be fired as a leader. Sorry. So again, that, you know, when I said that there is a switch from command and control to influential, means you are not, you know, I think there is a quote by, I don't remember the name of the person. It's like, you know, the role of the leader is to support in terms of failure also. I think that's even more the more important role is when the team fails, not when the team is successful. I think when the team is successful, it's the team's success. When the team fails, it's the leader's failure. I don't know. It's depends on how you think about it, but it's that's how I see it, and therefore I believe in flipping that what statement you just made, but not everybody agrees with me. That's true.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jan and Vivek. Next in the row of persons who ask is Morten from AgilityLab. I think that is, yeah, only one Morten. You also had a question.
Yeah, I was curious because there is a lot of what can you say, delay in the middle layer in organizations in these changes. That maybe you get the top on board and they will support it, but the middle layer of management, there's typically a lot of, what can you say, friction there to make changes. And that's very much also, you know, that's about commitment, that's about their role, that's about their power, but also about the reward systems that are typically built for hierarchy systems. So did Danfoss make any changes in the reward systems due to a change in the hierarchy? Was changed to remove some of these what can you say, challenges?
No, actually, we didn't have to. As I said, when you work with the organization, I think your question has actually two parts. Your first part, you mentioned a broader context of middle management, right? And again, as I say, why would middle management have a problem? You have to ask that question openly and discuss that question, right? If it is because they are feeling they are losing control, so then is it because that they are not getting control from up or down, right? So you know, it's let me put it this context, right? So if let's say the management, I don't want, you know, if the management is saying we are okay, if we are okay and the management is not role modeling that okay into, okay, now we empower you middle managers to take more decisions than you used to take in the past, then for me that is not a management team that has done what they said they are supporting, if you know what I mean, right? So usually in such cases, then the middle managers, they have experience in the organization. They are not like the juniors who believe everything that everybody in the organization says, right? So they're people who spend 10-15 years in the organization, build their seniority, reputation, and all of that stuff in the organization, and you have to show them real action. And if not just words, not just beautiful presentations and stuff like that, so you have to kind of show, if that management is not showing actions towards the middle management, like in my case, I would say, if I was not given the free hand to actually try this, right? You can say that management is doing whatever, but you know, then when it came to it, but no, Vivek, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. If I was stopped at everything, then I would say, okay, then you know, then it's more for saying that is happening and not really happening, right? So I think that's an important element from the top management to the middle management, that top management has to change something in the way they do compared to what they've done in the past, and usually it is meaning giving away more authority, empowerment, decision making to the middle management, because they have to fulfill that higher authority, higher level of responsibility, they in turn have to give away responsibility that they are currently having to the next level, and so on and so forth. So if you increase leadership, this is what I'm saying, it is about leadership, more leadership for all, not no leadership. So I think that's an important element to realize, that that means everybody is lifting in the terms of the level of decision making they're doing, and ironically we all do that, right? Between what 5 in the evening and next day 8 o'clock, we are all taking marriage decisions, house buying decisions. We're taking very complex decisions on a daily basis, but when it comes to work, we are saying no, this is manager decision, this is that decision. It's not, so it's kind of trying to bringing that a little bit more balance, that people are able to take the decision, but if you do not create the environment of the ecosystem for them to do that, then it's an issue. The second part you just said about the reward systems. Now, most organizations I know, they have the right reward systems that are enabled. It's flexible enough. For example, in the Danfoss context, we have two basic reward systems. There is an annual reward system, and there is an extraordinary reward system. And this is an existing system. So if people are willing to take roles, then there is always in that extraordinary system post facto, not pre facto. We are not, I think we are in Scandinavia, and the culture in Scandinavia, and compared to maybe some of the other countries, is very clearly that you're not upfront sending the carrot or whatever. You are trying to make sure that people show their passion, interest in that role and area first, and then based on that, you reward them on the role that they fulfill. So you can always evaluate how their performance was, their role was, and activities was in taking those new roles, and then reward them accordingly. So and I think that exists in almost all large organizations. I know that you can have this extraordinary increase, but you are then evaluating the role, not what what they were having in the past, but what they are doing now in that role, and is they have taken more responsibility on those roles.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and next is Thomas Wiesmann. You have a very short question. Would you like to bring it forward?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. Yeah, it was actually around what you already explored before here, Vivek. It was around the role of the top management or senior management in this transformation that you have done. So if I could eventually motivate a little bit more, then it is, I think it's kind of important, I guess, in general, to I feel it in the transformation I'm engaged in right now, that kind of senior management is important. I mean, as a sponsor and even active, you could say, partner to for the reason that Morten also raised here. I mean, to engage middle management as well. But could you be a little bit more specific on the role here? Because I'm also thinking another approach is not only delegating decisions and show that, it's also around how to communicate around it. I mean, is it a viable experiment or a pilot you're doing? I mean, that is kind of stamped or approved by top management, or so that's more into communication, or the can we call the culture mindset part. So I hope you can get me.
For sure, the communication, right? I think I can expand on a little bit more on that, right? So the best scenario always is from the CEO downwards, everybody wants to do it, right? So that's always the best scenario, where everybody in the organization wants to do it. So I'm trying to differentiate between the perfect scenario to to the lowest. There is a spectrum, right? And that's one aspect. So I hope you understand when I say you don't need top management to agree everything. I can tell you in my context, it was my immediate leader who's he's senior enough. He's a president of a division, but he's still not the CEO, right? He's still 2 steps below the CEO. So it was not the CEO who's saying the entire Danfoss is becoming self-managed, right? So it's not a CXO level decision, but it still requires different level of organizations to be able to set up. So so from the top management, like the CHRO of Danfoss, she was very supportive and said, hey, Vivek, let's try this and work. It happens, right? So doesn't mean that the CFO is fully engaged in what we are doing, or it's on the top agenda of the CEO of the company when we are a small part of such a 6 billion euro business company, right? So I think it's that differentiator that I'm trying to make, that middle management has a lot of freedom to do things within their own domain in many large organizations in that context. But having said that, any management, whether top management, middle management, as you may call it, they have to also walk the talk. And that does not mean just strategy wise saying, but also in terms of execution, in terms of communication, in terms of being there when the going gets tough also. Because if you say, for example, we could have been said, Corona times, let's stop all of this and let's do something else, right? That could have been an executive decision that could come and say, now go back and do a hierarchical way. So holding space becomes also an important management role besides the communication and the execution support. I hope that makes it clearer from my side. I don't know.
It makes sense. I mean, in particular, the distinction between it's not the CEO I'm talking about when I say top management here. I think it's the VP or the senior management that you actually, can we call it, that is, I guess, maybe the sponsor here, that he or she can stand up also for this experiment towards the you could say even the CEO and the top management, because that's I guess is an important precondition to do this, since you might actually be role modeling a change that you could say you actually you could say the stability you mentioned before in the more classic hierarchy is actually exposed. In an experiment like this, so that's why you need, I guess, the VP support to stand up for this.
Yeah, again, it depends on what scale of change that you're looking for, right? If you're isn't that true for any large transformation that anybody is doing, whether it's digital transformation, it is agile transformation, self-managed transformation, business model transformation, any large transformation requires, in my book, the same kind of support and advocacy and those elements. And I think that's true in this context also. As I said, it is a change management element, and therefore that remains true.
But it's just special in sorry for interrupting, it's just special in your case, as I understand. That's why it's so interesting, because it's really an example of how to engage and delegate decisions. All transformation does not necessarily means a lot of delegation. It often does, but not in as extreme as you're expressing it here, as to be self-management. And that's a difference, I think. That's why it's even more important, I guess. That was just my reflection.
Sure.
Okay, I would like to continue. We have a few more people who would like to ask questions. Jon, you have 2 questions. You may pick one, and then maybe we have time for the next one as well.
Only one, okay. And then I will take it from Rikke's perspective, because Rikke, I just checked you out on LinkedIn, the public part in LinkedIn, and you have been in Danfoss for the last 10 years. So you have been kind of the receiver of this kind of transformation. So from a quantity point of view, what is your testimony about how Danfoss was before and how it is now, just from your personal point of view?
That's a big question. I would say it depends on where you are in Danfoss. It's very, I would say, like it was 10 years ago, very hierarchical, most places, I would say. I've been lucky enough to work with Domenico and Vivek for many years now. And that change really happened when Domenico started, and then we started the journey with e-steering. So the change in itself has been rapid the last 5 years. It's been going really, really fast. It's been really fun. We learned a lot, and now really seeing the rest of Danfoss taking bits of it and starting to evolve with us. That has been really, really fun. And really learning as well, a lot of learning from everybody and for everybody. We are never ending. It's an infinite story, this one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jon and Rikke, and maybe we'll get back to you, Jon, again. Ivana, you have a question as well. Would you like to bring it forward?
Yes, and that goes very well with Rikke's statements just a minute ago, because I was curious about how different the culture that you're building in e-steering is from the rest of Danfoss. How big a jump is it?
I think, Rikke, you should give a little bit background on your history of, where you, some of the roles that you have taken in e-steering.
Yeah, and I have a little bit of a different story. I came in as like in the pilot, working as an HR specialist and coming in and helping, supporting them, looking at the processes. I've been working in HR since I started at Danfoss. So that's almost 5 years ago now that I actually, Vivek and I, we had a chat and I said, I want to stay in e-steering, please. And we did a lot of really good things, and that journey, that change for me, moving into classical HR into e-steering and having that mindset shift, because I was also used to not really taking a lot of decisions. I just made sure the processes was done and that it was done in time and stuff like that. And suddenly I had to have that mindset shift really, and thinking, okay, how can we help people, because it is different working in this environment. So really having that change, and I started, as I said, kind of as a specialist on processes, and very fast I ended up having a lot of different roles. I think I've been up to what now, 12, 15 different roles in the 5 years I've been there. And it changes several times a year, depending on what the business need is. It's really good. It's developing yourself very fast and very in a good way, because I also needed to learn how to understand engineers, understand how they're thinking, how they're working, what their needs are, and really learning all of that. And now we often laugh about it, Vivek and I, because sometimes it's like, I get them now. I understand where they're coming from, and I understand what their needs are. So that's ever evolving, I would say.
Thank you very much. And then we have Daniel Larsen, if you're still with us. Would you like to bring forward your question?
I'm still with you. I will not switch on video because it's cold and I'm outside. I'm not sure how much battery I have left.
Okay.
but Vivek, e-steering, the E, is that short for embedded? So that you are actually working very closely with the hardware? Because I would very much like to have some insights in, if we are going for the embedded software part, what the challenges that you have seen there is, or if you have connecting areas that does embedded software.
We do embedded software, but the E stands for, is actually open. So it can be embedded, it can be electric, it can be electro-hydraulic. So depends on the strategy. We can keep using the E as we need, because all of those elements are part of our strategy. So
perfect. But if looking at the embedded part, then often, at least in the company I'm working in, we have a challenge that a lot of things needs to be enabled before someone else can start developing features for the customers. Do you face the same thing? Have you bridged that in any way? And if it's not possible to answer here, let's have a chat afterwards.
yeah, I think the short answer is yes, and that's by giving the empowerment to the cross-functional team. And that's where, if you just say, okay, this department is responsible for this, and this department is responsible for this, then you don't have it. So what we try to do is like keep ownership at a product level for a cross-functional team, and therefore as a team they are able to take independent decisions at a product level for their product, and they are responsible for their product success in that context.
If it's okay with you, I'll just reach out to you afterwards then. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have the time for 2 more questions from Manjula and Jon. You had more than one question. So Manjula, please bring forward your next question, unless it was also.
Okay, Okay, Lise, I think I am done with my questions. Maybe there would be some comment here,
Yeah,
here and there.
then we'll move on to Jon, I think, because Jon has a question.
Yes.
One more.
Very inspiring and very, very valuable session, I must say. One of my recent lessons learned was, before you start the transformation, of course, understand the why, but do also remember to make a baseline. What is the turn? What is the employee net promoter score? Can we make a happiness index score or something, whatever? And then follow not the output, but the outcome, perhaps in an OKR model, and then monitoring the needle as you go, and then also adjust your change management initiative accordingly. Have you just like me forgotten to do that, or have you actually done it?
No, actually we didn't necessarily baseline day one, because we didn't have a business unit day one. If you remember, we were a project so there was no, you could not baseline a department to a business, right? So we were, before, just to give you an understanding, that we were a department within another business that was carved out to become its own business. So that baseline does not translate in any context, because you're just moving from one function to a cross-functional business in that context. So it is not that we forgot, but we couldn't baseline because we were starting from a new business at that point of time. But what we did was actually baseline. We had at least our own surveys on top of the organizational surveys and the metrics, where we measured this and how we progress on of it, and all of that stuff, to adjust, take action items on a half-yearly basis at the minimum, but at least doing quarterly retrospectives and checking for these things. But one word of very strong caution: good decisions don't mean good outcomes. Bad decisions don't mean bad outcomes. For example, you do amazing self-management, Corona strikes, market falls, your business is going for a toss. It doesn't matter whether you're hierarchy or self-management. So when you measure metrics, you have to be putting the environmental there, and I think that's where, in my viewpoint, doesn't matter whether you do SMART or OKR or whatever metrics measurements. The comparison is you have to do it with caution. And if you use that as especially towards top management as your main discussion point, then bad outcomes, which are not necessarily based on bad decisions, might lead to different discussions. So I think that's a very important point that I would like to highlight, that yes, measure, but don't make that your only lever for working.
Okay, Mette, is that you from
Yes.
Gunny who has raised your hand?
Yeah, I just had adding a question to that, because I'm curious about what, in your view, has been the most effective metrics to get this insight on how you're doing in times where there hasn't been too much turbulence. So where you actually think they reflected positive or negative things in your organization. What were your key metrics to look at?
I don't know is the answer. I think this is very important. That I think if we think that, again, I'm coming back to it, the metrics. I can give a concrete example. When the initial Corona happened and the initial results of the employee survey was taken, our score on job security ended up being one of the lowest, even though we had not any negative reactions on the people, because we were transparent about the business situation. So the feedback we got after, I was like, how come our, every score was high, almost every other score was high. We had the highest results compared to the division, compared to the company. So we were on the top, but on this particular parameter we were way below average. And I was like, but we didn't let go of any people. We didn't have major cutbacks on XYZ compared to many of the other businesses. And the answer we got from the team is that, hey, but we knew more than the other teams. That's is a scary thing.
Yes.
so should I have used that metric to say, I'll tell you less now, or should I, should we have worked as a dialogue? So I think the metric is only the measure, the dialogue is the success. So I think whatever, every time we do the metrics, we always find something new. Like for example, the last survey result that has just come out has shown that this very metrics is up 14 points.
So what I'm curious about here is perhaps, because when you just say metrics, I was looking for exactly concrete things. What have you been measuring and what have you been looking at?
So when you talk concrete things, if you're talking about turnover, if you're talking profitability, if you're talking about contribution margin, if these are concrete things for you, then that's part of the business, right? We have to discuss this is what I meant by the monthly business, right? So when I said giving them the more transparency, we start with the year that here, this is our goal, this is our top line, this is our bottom line, this is our contribution margin, and then month by month we show them how we are doing. The top line is not going high, the profitability is not going low, and when you're showing this transparently, then that's what I was talking about, having the dialogue, and then you don't, it's to use those metrics then to say, okay, now what do we do? Okay, top line is not coming, are we doing actions to do increase top line? Okay, then that is the task of that circle. And then if there's no, we need to look at bottom line. Okay, these XYZ elements for bottom line, then this is the actions that would go for bottom line improvement, and using them as a action source is what I was talking about. So as you can, we are not running this for the sake of doing just the self-management part. We have grown more than double, we have quadrupled our profitability. So
yeah, that's what I was after.
Traditional metrics, those would be the traditional metrics that we would be measured on. Are we growing and profitably growing better than what we say we did, and we beat all our estimates?
Thanks. That's what I was looking for to understand. Thanks.
Kurt also raised a hand. Maybe Kurt disappeared in the meanwhile.
No, I'm still here.
Yeah, feel free to ask.
Time passed by, but I just wanted to add to the discussion about 5-10 minutes ago about the metrics and OKRs, etc. I think in what you described, Vivek, very vividly, was also that in the initial phase, of course, I bet you have to rely a lot on verbal feedback and interpretation, people's own interpretation, because in my experience, one of the most dangerous things is to too quickly home in on a number and says this number means this, because as you just rightly said, occasionally actually the metric, the number shows something completely different because there was a different reason for it. And also quite often it has been discovered that there is such strong cultural values included in many of those questions that people ask that you can't really rely on them. You have to interpret what people actually say and have them self-assess what they mean by it. It's unfortunately a hard work to understand what's going on in the initial phases until it stabilizes.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And I think maybe the one comment about this particular topic then I would say is it's interesting that a lot of people ask for the metrics. How can we be sure that it's perfect and it's going to be work? But nobody is asking when a line organization is moving to a metric structure, or a metrics organization is moving to some other variant of a hierarchical organization structure, that did we baseline that? Did we then measure that? In the last 15 years I've been, and maybe most of you are working for 20-35 years, we have had at least 10 times organizational changes at the minimum, but have all of them been measured? We have never asked the exact same question. We have not asked on those 10 variants of hierarchical organization structures, and I don't have an A/B testing. I was not doing half the team self-management, half the team hierarchical. Now let's see how you perform actually based on this, right? Because that is the only way to really, again, scientifically, if you're scientifically measuring things, then you have to measure it in that context. So I think that's an element that I feel it's it's a way to anything. We think that the safety is in the metric. I don't believe it.
Thank you. Maybe this will be the end comment or the end answer for tonight. Vivek did promise that it was okay to stay a few more minutes, so that is why I did not intentionally interrupt anybody. And I really want to thank you, first of all, Vivek, for spending your evening with us. That has been extremely enlightening for all of us, and I speak for everybody based on the number of questions we had. That has been very overwhelming. So thank you for questions, and thank you for the answers, Vivek. I sincerely hope we can stay in touch, keep in touch. It would be it's very interesting to follow you and your next results. I know you're not in the exact same department right now, so you have moved on inside of Danfoss.
In the new year, I'm moving into a new role in sales. So I'm looking forward to new experiences as everybody else is, right? So it's not about doing everybody wants to do new roles, including me.
Yeah, and I know you're also looking for like-minded people that want to work for you very practically on spreading the word and doing something in this area. So I hope some of you guys will connect together.
Yeah, I think that maybe if I can get that last minute on that point, I think really if there's anybody on the call here who would like to implement it and in their own teams and stuff, and you think that me or Rike or anybody from East Steering can actually help you out, please reach out. We are there to help, because we believe that this is the way that the world should work. But for that, it's drops in the ocean, right? So we need everybody to be doing that. So helping each other is the only way.
Yes, please.
Very much. Anybody wants a final remark before I call it a day? No? Then let's call it a day. And once again, thank you very much, Vivek. And again, keep in touch, all of you. It's so nice to see so many familiar faces coming again and again to AgilityLab. So keep up that, and watch out for the next event. Okay, thanks for now.
Thanks for having me and the team. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.